The red sun of Xeris 9 bled across the dunes, staining metal wreckage and shattered helmets with its dying glow. Heat rose in shimmering waves, carrying the stench of burning oil and alien flesh. The battlefield stretched on without end, a graveyard of soldiers and machines. Captain Renvos shifted the strap of his rifle, boots crunching over glassed sand. His armor was scuffed, cracked at the shoulder where plasma had kissed too close. Each step was heavy, but his eyes kept scanning, not for enemies now, but for survivors. A faint sound reached him, not a soldier's groan, not the hum of a reactor dying, but something softer, a whimper. He turned sharply, crouching behind a half-melted mech chassis. There, wedged under the twisted plating of an escape pod, a girl no older than 12, maybe 13. Skin the pale violet of dusk, hair silver white and tangled with sand. Her chest rose in shallow, trembling breaths. Renvos hissed through his teeth. A Veilani, a princess. If the crest on her shredded robes was real, he should call it in. Let command decide. But the sniper's crack echoed a heartbeat later, sparking against the mech near his head. No time. The sea was calm that morning. Waves lapped gently against the hulls of small fishing boats tethered along the dock. Captain Renvos, though he hadn't been called that in years, knelt by a wooden skiff, tightening a line with practiced hands. The air smelled of salt, not smoke. Of brine, not blood. It should have been enough. A quiet life. A simple life. But sometimes, when the sun dipped low and the sky burned red, he saw violet skin against the dunes, silver eyes watching him with childish certainty, and he heard her voice again. When I grow up, I'll marry you. He'd laugh, shake his head, tell himself it had been nothing but the delirium of a rescued child. Still, the memory lingered like a scar he couldn't quite ignore. The knock. It was just after dusk when the knock came. Heavy, urgent. 3 times against the wooden door of his shack. Ren frowned. Visitors were rare out here. He set his mug of stale coffee down, hand brushing the old pistol tucked in his belt. When he opened the door, the sea breeze carried in the scent of rain, and with it, a figure cloaked in shadow. She stepped forward. Her hood fell back. Silver eyes. Older now, sharp with exhaustion. Violet skin marred with scars that hadn't been there before. White hair damp, clinging to her face from the storm. Ren froze. La Sarah. His voice was rougher than he meant. Her lips trembled. For the first time in 20 years, Princess La Sarah, no, Queen La Sarah, looked at him not as a child, not as royalty, but as a woman broken by the weight of survival. Renvos, she whispered. I had nowhere else to go. The confession. Inside, she sat by the dim fire, hands curled around a steaming cup he'd forced into them. She barely drank. Her eyes never left the flames. Piece by piece, the story spilled out. Her father assassinated. Lord Corrin, her consort by force, seizing the throne. Years of cruelty behind palace walls. Children born into fear. Whispers of rebellion crushed before they sparked. Her voice cracked. He took everything. My name. My family. My freedom. And now my children. They are his prisoners. I barely escape alive. Ren leaned back, staring into the shadows. The fire popped. The waves outside crashed harder against the rocks. She turned to him, desperate. I cannot do this alone. I thought maybe you would remember. The answer. Ren stood slowly, joints stiff from years away from battle. He crossed to the chest beneath his bed and lifted the lid. The metal gleam of old armor plates caught the firelight. His sidearm rested where he'd left it decades ago. He strapped the pistol to his hip, then looked at her. 20 years, he said, voice low. And you still think I'd walk away? Her silver eyes shone with sudden, dangerous hope. Ren smirked faintly, the soldier's humor he hadn't used in years surfacing again. I believe I owe you a wedding. Been a while, but you're old enough now. For the first time since she'd stepped through his door, La Sarah laughed, soft, shaky, but real. And just like that, the quiet years of silence ended. The war, it seemed, was beginning again. The transport ship was old, its hull rattling with every burst from the engines. Inside the cramped cabin, Renvos sat across from La Sarah. The dim lighting flickered against her face, throwing shadows over the scars that hadn't been there 20 years ago. She didn't look like the girl he'd carried across the dunes. She didn't even look like the royal figure from the war councils of old. She looked like someone who had been broken down, piece by piece, and was only just managing to stand again. Ren leaned back, arms folded across his chest. So, start talking. What the hell happened to you? Sarah closed her eyes, as though gathering strength. When she opened them, silver irises caught the light like cold fire. The story of Corin. My father's death was the beginning, she whispered. Poison in his chalice. The kind that leaves no trace. Corin's men were the only ones near him that night. The very next morning, Corin stood before the council and declared himself regent consort of Vios. My mother was already gone, and she hesitated, her jaw tightening. I was just 16. The council obeyed. Her hands curled into fists. They said it was for stability, for the people. But what it meant was that I was his wife, his possession, his trophy. Ren's grip tightened on the armrest, leather creaking beneath his hand. He didn't interrupt. Years passed, she continued. Every decision I tried to make was overturned. Every voice that dared support me was silenced. Some disappeared. Others bent the knee out of fear. Her voice dropped lower. And the children, my son and daughter, he treats them not as heirs, but as bargaining chips. He boasts that they will inherit his iron rule. I have not seen them in years, except as ornaments paraded for the crowd. Her lips trembled. I endured it, because I thought, if I waited long enough, maybe I could protect them from within. But I was a fool. Corin only grew stronger, and I weaker. The escape. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing a jagged burn along her forearm. Old, half-healed, but ugly. This was his last gift, she said, her voice flat. He branded me with the mark of treachery, announced to the court that I had conspired with assassins, that I had betrayed him. He ordered my execution. She laughed bitterly. But Corin never understood the palace like I did. He never learned the tunnels beneath the sky spire. I escaped with a rebel cell. They died buying me time. I made it to a smuggler's craft, but every safe harbor turned me away. I was poison, a ruined queen, until I remembered the only promise anyone ever made me. Her eyes lifted, meeting his across the cabin. They weren't pleading now. They were steady, unflinching. You, Renvos. The decision. Ren rubbed his jaw, staring at her. The soldier in him wanted to curse. The man in him wanted to comfort her. Instead, he did what he always did, cut straight through with blunt words. You came all this way, he said slowly, because of something you said when you were 12. Because you kept your word when no one else ever did, she answered. Silence filled the cabin. Only the low hum of engines and the faint rattle of loose bolts accompanied them. Finally, Ren stood, stretching his stiff shoulders. He walked to the weapons locker and unlatched it. Dust coated the rifles inside, relics from a war most had tried to forget. He pulled one free, checked the chamber, and slung it across his back with practiced ease. When he turned, his eyes met hers, and there was no hesitation in his voice. All right then, let's get your children back. For the first time since the sea winds had carried her to his door, lost Sarah allowed herself to breathe. The stars stretched around them, endless, cold, and sharp as broken glass. The little scout ship creaked under the strain of faster-than-light travel, its old systems whining like tired bones. Renvos sat strapped into the co-pilot's chair, arms crossed, watching the blur of hyperspace with a soldier's stillness. Beside him, lost Sarah piloted in silence. Her fingers moved with instinct over the console, her posture calm, but Ren noticed the tremor whenever she lifted her hands away from the controls. She was running on discipline alone. You're going to burn yourself out, he muttered. She didn't look at him. If I stop moving, I'll start remembering, and I can't afford that right now. He leaned back, studying her profile in the pale glow of the cockpit. The girl he once carried through sandstorms was gone, replaced by a woman sharpened by grief, fire, and endurance. But in the tight line of her jaw, he still saw that same stubborn spark. After a long silence, Ren broke it. Tell me everything about the Sky Spire. Entrances, patrols, choke points. Assume I know nothing. Lost Sarah glanced at him, one brow arched. You planned half our battles 20 years ago. You know more than nothing. War taught me one thing, he said evenly. Overconfidence kills. Start at the beginning. So she did. She described the palace, its rebuilt walls, the fortified towers bristling with automated turrets, and the skyward spire where Corin had entrenched himself. She spoke of underground tunnels her father had secretly commissioned long before Corin's reign, passages that only royal blood could access. Ren listened, every detail feeding into the mental map forming in his head. His hand scribbled in a battered notebook, filling page after page with sketches, timing estimates, and fallback routes. When she finished, he looked up. Suicidal, he said. Her lips thinned. So you won't help. He smirked. Didn't say that. Just means it'll be fun. For the first time in days, she let out a genuine laugh, short, surprised, and fragile, like a crystal bell that had almost forgotten how to ring. 6 days passed as they drifted system by system, avoiding patrols, scavenging fuel, and staying just outside the net of Corin's war fleet. In those stolen days, something old stirred between them. Ren taught her Terran slang, words she repeated with regal dignity that only made them funnier. Cool beans, she pronounced one morning with a straight face, and he nearly choked on his ration bar. She retaliated by teaching him Veilani curses. The syllables rasped like wind through broken glass. He tried one, mispronounced it badly, and she doubled over laughing until tears streaked her cheeks. At night, when the ship's heater failed, they huddled under spare blankets, shoulder to shoulder. Ren told stories of fishing trips gone wrong, of fixing engines with tape and prayers. She spoke of Veilani myths, of starborn serpents and empires older than memory. And once, when the nebulae outside painted the viewport in ribbons of violet and blue, she asked softly, "Do you regret it? Not staying, not taking my father's offer?" Ren stared into the swirling light. Regret? No. Wonder? Sometimes. She didn't answer, but her hand brushed his in the dark. When they reached Vios, the sight silenced them both. The once proud capital world burned. Great cities were shrouded in smoke. Ships clogged the orbit, thousands of refugees begging for safe passage, while Corin's fleet hovered like wolves, forcing them back to the surface. Broadcast towers blared his face, pale, cruel, triumphant. The palace itself loomed above it all, black and gleaming, the sky spire stabbing upward like a blade through the heart of the city. Lasara's hands tightened on the controls until her knuckles whitened. Her voice shook, but not with fear. With fury. He turned my father's beacon into a cage. Ren placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Then we break it open. She nodded, jaw set. The tunnels begin in old Vios, buried beneath the ruins of a temple. It will be dangerous. Ren grinned, checking the charge on his rifle. Good. I'd hate for it to be boring. The scout ship descended into the smoke-choked atmosphere, vanishing into the ruins where rebellion still whispered in the shadows. The war for the Empire was about to begin again. The ruins of old Vios groaned under their boots like the bones of a dead god. Collapsed towers jutted out of the ground at broken angles. Streets were buried in rubble, and the air tasted of rust and ash. Yet beneath the ruin, life clung on. Shadows of people darted between gutted buildings, the forgotten citizens of the Undercity, scraping survival in the cracks of an empire. Ren and Lost Sarah moved quickly, cloaks pulled tight against the wind. Every corner carried the risk of patrols, mercenaries in matte-black armor, paid in blood to guard Corin's throne. They found the temple at dusk, or what was left of it, 100 meters of shattered stone, half buried under layers of collapsed concrete. The spires were gone, the statues eroded faceless, but the royal seal was still visible in one fragment of wall, 3 stars encircling a spiral. Lost Sarah pressed her palm against it. The stone pulsed faintly, veins of ancient light sparking to life. Ren raised an eyebrow. Still works after 30 years? She allowed herself the smallest smile. My father believed in redundancy. With a deep groan, the stone shifted. Dust cascaded down. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a stairwell plunging into the dark. The air that rose from it was damp, metallic, and old. Ren switched on his helmet light. Well, ladies first. Coward, she muttered, but stepped down ahead of him. The stairwell led to a maze of tunnels, pipes lining the walls, moss glowing faintly like ghost fire. Their footsteps echoed, strangely loud in the stillness. Every so often, La Sarah would pause, touch a wall, and whisper directions. Left here. This passage curves beneath the arboretum. Right, that one collapses. Ren marked their progress in his notebook, scratching symbols. He never trusted memory alone. Then came the rumble. Low at first, then growing. The ground trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lasara's eyes widened. Seismic drills. Corin's building bunkers. He's tearing apart the Undercity. Ren steadied her with a hand. Then we moved faster. They pushed forward, deeper, until the faint glow of lights shimmered ahead. Voices echoed, harsh, guttural, not Veilani. Ren held up a fist. Stop. Through a grate, they saw them. Half a dozen mercenaries patrolling the tunnel. Their armor gleamed oily black, their helmets insect-like, optics glowing red. Each carried a pulse rifle crackling with energy. Corin's elite, La Sarah whispered. He trusts no one else this close. Ren smirked, already reaching into his pack. Good thing I brought toys. From the pouch, he pulled out small discs no bigger than coins. EMP charges, magnetic pulses tuned to fry electronics within a narrow radius. He crouched, flicking one between his fingers. Stay behind me. Count of 3 if I go down. She rolled her eyes, but drew her thin energy blade ready. Ren flicked the first disc. It landed with a faint clink near a mercenary's boot. Thump. A pulse rippled out, silent but sharp. Optics flickered. Comms crackled. The mercenary staggered. Ren moved like a shadow. 2 quick strikes, the first disarming, the second to the helmet's joint. The soldier collapsed without a sound. One by one, he repeated the dance. Toss. Pulse. Strike. La Sarah followed close, finishing off with precise cuts, disabling weapons, slicing through armor at weak points. Minutes later, 6 mercenaries lay unconscious, bound with Ren's zip cuffs. She exhaled, chest heaving. Show off. He grinned. Learn from the best. The royal seal. Deeper still, the tunnel opened into a chamber. A great circular door loomed ahead, metal etched with the same 3 stars and spiral seal. Time had tarnished it, but the craftsmanship endured. La Sarah stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she placed her palm on the scanner. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Ren saw panic flicker in her eyes. Then chime. Soft light rippled across the seal, and the door hissed open. Beyond it lay silence and dust. Empty ballrooms, abandoned throne rooms, faded banners sagging from the ceiling. The forgotten heart of her childhood. Lasara's voice was almost a whisper. This was my world. Ren touched her shoulder gently. And we're taking it back. Together, they stepped inside. The abandoned palace was a mausoleum. Their footsteps echoed through corridors lined with faded banners, the once bright silk dulled by decades of dust. Chandeliers hung crooked, jewels cracked or missing. Great doors stood ajar, their hinges groaning like dying throats when pushed. La Sarah walked ahead, her fingers trailing along the walls, brushing carvings she hadn't seen since she was a girl. Her voice was low, reverent. I learned to walk on these stones. I thought they'd last forever. Ren stayed close, rifle raised, every sense alert. He didn't trust silence. Not here. Not in the heart of Corin's empire. They turned a corner and stopped. The nursery. Lasara's old chamber. The door had been painted once, soft hues of blue and silver. Now the colors were scorched, blackened with fire. She pushed it open with trembling hands. Inside, broken toys littered the floor. A carved wooden serpent, a hollow projector cracked and sparking, a music box whose key no longer turned. The cradle that had once been hers lay smashed in a corner. She knelt, picking up the serpent. Its tail was gone, but the eye still glowed faintly when pressed. Tears blurred her vision. My father carved this himself. For me. Ren crouched beside her. His voice was quiet, steady. He'd be proud you made it this far. She set the toy down and rose. Her tears were gone. In their place, steel. They aren't here. He wouldn't keep them in ruins. He parades them in the light. It took hours of weaving through secret halls, ducking between patrols, before they reached the grand atrium at the Skyspire's heart. The Sun Chamber. Ren had seen war palaces before, but this was different. The chamber blazed with light refracted through crystal domes high above. Golden walls reflected the radiance until every surface seemed aflame. At the far end, on a dais of black marble, stood 2 ornate thrones. And there, between the thrones, were the children. A boy of perhaps 12, tall for his age, his chin lifted in defiance though his wrists were bound in golden cuffs. A girl younger, maybe 9, eyes wide and watchful, her small hands clenched tight. Both shared Lasara's silver hair, though their eyes gleamed darker, Corin's mark. Lost Sarah gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Vayon. Saris. Ren pulled her back into the shadows. Not yet. Because the chamber was not empty. Dozens of guards stood watch, armor gleaming like obsidian, rifles ready. And at the far edge of the dais, speaking softly to the children with venom disguised as honey, stood Lord Corin himself. Even after all the stories, all the scars he'd left, Corin was worse in the flesh. Tall, broad-shouldered, his skin pale as bone, his hair streaked with silver and black. His smile was a blade, sharp, cold, designed to wound. The mark of his reign gleamed on his chest plate, a serpent strangling 3 stars. Children of La Sarah, he purred, running a hand through Vayon's hair. The boy flinched, jaw tightening. You will learn what your mother never did. Loyalty buys life. Defiance buys only pain. Lasara's nails dug into her palms until blood welled. Ren caught her wrist, whispering, Wait, not here. Not yet. Her eyes burned. He touches them one more time. And we'll take him apart. Ren growled. But smart. Not suicidal. They melted back into the shadows as Corin rose from the dais. He motioned, and the guards closed ranks around the children. Bring them to the Hall of Chains, Corin ordered. His voice was smooth, casual, but it carried the weight of iron. They will watch tonight's executions. Let them learn what happens to traitors. Ren and La Sarah watched in silence as the children were marched away, their small figures swallowed by the glare of the Sun Chamber's light. When the last guard was gone, Ren exhaled slowly. Now we know where they're kept. La Sarah turned to him, her face hard as carved stone. I won't leave without them. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with the same fire she carried. Then we take them back, whatever it costs. In the silence that followed, the echoes of her childhood vow rang again between them, no longer the words of a child, but the oath of a fallen queen and the soldier who had chosen her. The tunnels carried them closer to the heart of the Skyspire. Every step was colder, every corridor more heavily patrolled. The air reeked of ozone and iron, the stink of executions long past. Ren's senses stayed sharp, rifle ready, knife at his thigh. He counted guards by their shadows, by the scuff of boots against stone, by the faint static of their comms. La Sarah followed, silent as breath, her blade drawn. Gone was the princess who once whispered vows in a desert. Here in the dark, she moved like a ghost, all fury contained in silence. At last, they reached the Hall of Chains. The chamber was vast, circular, its walls lined with iron shackles and manacles, some old with rust, others gleaming with fresh polish. A dozen prisoners knelt on the floor, shackled, awaiting judgment. High above, stained glass windows depicted the rise of Corin, him crowned, him triumphant over rebels, him casting Lasara's likeness into fire. Every panel was propaganda, and at the center, bound to a raised platform for all to see, were Vayon and Saris. The boy glared at the guards, shoulders squared despite his chains. The girl pressed close to her brother, lips trembling, but her eyes shone fierce. Ren's chest tightened. Brave kids, brave like their mother, but around them, the danger was worse than before. Dozens of elite guards lined the chamber. At the far end stood Corin, arms outstretched as he addressed a crowd of sycophants. Tonight, his voice boomed, we show mercy to none. Let these children of traitors learn loyalty through blood. The crowd roared. In the shadows above, Ren leaned against the wall, whispering into Lasara's ear. Too many to fight clean. We hit fast, we hit loud, then we vanish with the kids. Her jaw tightened. I want him dead. You'll get your chance, Ren promised. But not tonight. Tonight we survive. She hesitated, then nodded once. Her hand brushed his, a brief anchor in the storm. The strike. Ren pulled a small detonator from his pouch. For charges were already set along the northern wall, planted during their crawl through the tunnels. He pressed the trigger. The explosion shook the hall, stone and fire raining down. Screams filled the chamber. Guards staggered, confused, weapons raised. Ren and La Sara dropped from the balcony like shadows. Ren's rifle barked 3 times, dropping soldiers before they could aim. Lasara's blade hissed, carving through armor at weak points, each strike precise, merciless. Mother! Saris cried, her voice piercing the chaos. Lasara's heart lurched, but she didn't falter. She cut down a guard and leapt onto the dais, her chain's word sparking as it sliced through the cuffs, binding her children. Ren covered her, firing bursts that cracked helmets and tore through black plating. A guard lunged with a shock baton. Ren met him with a knife to the throat, swift and final. Move! Ren barked, grabbing Veon by the shoulder. Stay behind me, no matter what. The boy nodded fiercely, already shielding his sister with his small frame. Across the chamber, the crowd scattered, all except Corin. He stood calm amid the fire, his pale face glowing in the chaos. His smile cut across the hall like a blade. La Sara, he drawled, his voice carrying even over screams and gunfire. You never could resist drama. Her head snapped toward him, fury blazing. Touch them again, and I will gut you where you stand. Corin chuckled. Ah, there she is. My runaway queen. His eyes slid to Ren, narrowing. And the ghost of the past. How poetic. Guards regrouped at his side, rifles raised. The hall would flood with reinforcements any second. Ren shoved La Sara toward the tunnels. We go now. She hesitated, torn between vengeance and escape. Then Saris tugged her hand, whispering, Mama, please. That broke her. She scooped Saris into her arms, grabbed Veon's hand, and ran. Ren covered their retreat, rifle blazing until the last charge clicked empty. Then he hurled the gun aside, grabbed a smoke bomb, and tossed it into the chamber. Smoke, screams, shouts. By the time the haze cleared, they were gone, swallowed by the tunnels beneath the sky spire. They didn't stop running until the echoes of pursuit faded. Ren slumped against a wall, chest heaving, sweat streaking his face. La Sara knelt between her children, clutching them tight, her tears soaking into their silver hair. I thought I'd lost you forever, she whispered. Veon, still defiant even in her arms, looked up at Ren. Who are you? Ren smirked faintly, despite the blood on his knuckles. Just a friend of your mother's. Call me Ren. Saris peeked at him shyly from her mother's embrace. You came for us. He nodded, voice steady. Always. Behind them, La Sara raised her gaze to the tunnels stretching deeper into shadow. Corin still lived. His empire still stood. But for the first time in years, she had her children back, and she was no longer alone. The tunnels stretched for miles beneath the sky spire, but Ren knew every step closer to freedom was borrowed time. Patrols would already be sweeping the Undercity. Still, for the first time in hours, he allowed himself to breathe. La Sara walked just ahead, her children at her sides. Saris clung to her hand as if it were the only anchor in the universe. Veon kept his chin high, eyes darting, as though daring shadows to attack. They were alive. That was victory enough for tonight. They stopped in a cavern lit by bioluminescent moss, the air damp but quiet. Ren checked their bearings, then motioned for them to rest. La Sara knelt, cupping her daughter's face. Her hand shook, but her voice was soft, steady. You're safe now. I swear it. Saris buried her face against her mother's chest, sobbing quietly. Veon sat apart, staring at the glowing moss. His voice was sharp, edged with bitterness. You swore once before, when Father died, And then you vanished. Lost Sarah froze, stricken. Vayon. He whipped around, eyes burning with something too old for his years. Do you know what Corin told us? That you abandoned us. That you chose your pride over your children. Her lips trembled, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. That is a lie. Is it? He snapped. Because you weren't there when he chained us. You weren't there when he... His voice broke, fury cracking into grief. We needed you. Silence fell, heavy and raw. At last, Lost Sarah crossed the distance and pulled him into her arms. He fought, shoving at her shoulders, but she held fast, whispering fiercely, I was not strong enough then. I am now. I will never leave you again. Not while I still draw breath. Vayon stilled, his fists slowly unclenched. After a long moment, he let himself lean into her. Ren looked away, giving them the moment, though his jaw tightened. He'd seen soldiers carry wounds deeper than bullets, and he knew these scars would take longer to heal. Later, as the children dozed against their mother, Ren sat sharpening his knife. The sound was steady, rhythmic, filling the cavern. Vayon cracked an eye open. You're not like Corin's men. Ren smirked without looking up. That's one way to put it. Why are you helping us? The boy pressed. Ren sheathed the knife and met his gaze. Because 20 years ago, your mother asked me to, and I don't break promises. Vayon studied him, suspicion warring with curiosity. Finally, he nodded once, as though granting him temporary approval. Saris, half asleep, mumbled, I like him. Ren chuckled, leaning back against the stone. Smart kid. Their quiet was broken by the scrape of boots. Ren was on his feet instantly, rifle raised. From the shadows emerged figures in patched armor, faces hidden by scarves. Weapons pointed, but not firing. A woman stepped forward, lowering her hood. Her eyes were sharp, her voice low but commanding. Lost Sarah Vaylani. So the rumors were true. The Lost Queen walks again. Lost Sarah rose slowly, her children behind her. And you are? Commander Selix, the woman replied. Leader of the VO's resistance. We've been waiting for a spark. Seems you just lit one. Her gaze flicked to Ren. Suspicion narrowed her eyes. And you brought a Terran with you. Ren didn't flinch. You're welcome. Selix's lips curled faintly. Bold. But bold is what we need. She gestured to the shadows. More rebels stepped forward, a ragtag army, malnourished, poorly armed, but burning with quiet fury. Corin will hunt you, Selix warned. But with you, maybe we can hunt him first. Lost Sarah clasped her children's hands, then looked at Ren. For the first time since her return, her voice carried not just pain, but command. Then let's build an army. The Sky Spire's upper chambers reeked of smoke and blood. Guards dragged the unconscious and the wounded from shattered hall of chains. Shards of stained glass crunched beneath their boots, crimson light spilling across the marble like fresh gore. And at the center of it all stood Lord Corin. He was calm, too calm. His pale fingers traced the cracks in the dais, where Lasara's blade had struck. His reflection in the polished marble smiled faintly back at him, though his eyes burned with fury. A captain approached, armor dented, visor cracked. He fell to one knee. My lord, we failed to contain them. The children. Corin's gauntlet struck his jaw with bone-snapping force. The man toppled, choking blood. Corin stepped over him as though over refuse. Do you think I do not know what was lost? He said softly. His voice carried more dread than a shout. She stands against me now. She dares. The chamber fell silent, but for the crackle of distant flames. Corin ascended to his private chamber, a cavernous hall lit by a ceiling of glass that revealed the burning skies of Vios. He sat upon the black throne, serpent motifs coiling around its arms. Hollow screens flickered to life, reports cascading across them. Rebel cells re-emerging in the Undercity. Supply convoys raided. Rumors spreading, Lost Sarah lives. His jaw tightened. Fear was useful. Hope was poison. Send word to the governors, he ordered. Double levies. Triple executions. I want hope strangled before it draws breath. The attendants bowed and scurried to obey. But Corin's thoughts were elsewhere. He remembered Saris's defiant glare. Vaon's attempt at a soldier's posture. They were too much their mother's spawn. Dangerous, untamed, yet useful. A slow smile curved his lips. Let her cling to them. Let her believe they are safe. He leaned back, fingers steepled, because nothing bends the will faster than a child's scream. He waved a hand over the throne's console. A hidden hollow sparked to life. The face of a shadowed figure, voice distorted. "My lord," the figure rasped. "Our assassins stand ready." Corrin's smile widened. "Good. Track them. Let them think they escape into shadows. And when she grows comfortable, strike. Leave the queen alive. Kill the Terran. And bring the children back to me, screaming." The hollow flickered and vanished. Corrin rose, his cloak of black silk trailing like smoke across the marble. He walked to the great window, gazing down at the city writhing under his control. Fires burned, protests crushed, banners bearing his serpent sigil snapping in the wind. He lifted a glass of crimson wine, holding it aloft. "To you, lost Sarah," he murmured, "my runaway queen. You fled me once, but the Empire bends to my hand, and when I break you before your people, they will watch and know there is no salvation." He drank deep. Outside, the banner snapped louder, as if hissing serpents echoed his vow. The safe house was an old observatory buried beneath Vios's broken skyline. Its cracked dome had once charted stars, now it charted war. The floor was littered with cots, ration crates, half-working consoles, salvaged from junkyards. Ren sat at a scarred metal table, spreading out his notebook, the same one he'd carried since Xeris 9. Pages filled with maps, sketches, numbers. He tapped his pencil against a drawing of the Skyspire's undercity. 3 access points left, he muttered. 2 collapsed. 1 crawling with merc patrols, which means we make a new one. Around him, rebels leaned in. Humans and Vailani both, scarred soldiers, deserters, wide-eyed students clutching rifles too heavy for them. They watched him with a strange mixture of fear and faith. Lost Sarah moved through the chamber, speaking softly to each fighter. She didn't bark orders, she listened. A woman complained about her sick son in the slums. Lost Sarah promised medicine from the palace stores once they won. A young soldier trembled. Lost Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder, silver eyes steady. "Fear is not weakness," she told him. "It is proof you understand what's at stake." The boy straightened, swallowing hard. Ren watched her, a quiet smile tugging his lips. Not just a princess, a leader, a damn good one. Night deepened. The rebels gathered as Ren stood before a flickering holomap. The sky spire loomed like a blade stabbed into the heart of Vios. Corrin fortified the spire with layers of shields and automated guns. "We can't storm it. We'd be ash before we crossed the square. But the old tunnels beneath? Still intact." He tapped a blinking point. "Maintenance shaft C-17. We blow it open from below. Slip inside before the alarm cycle. Small team, fast strike." A grizzled Vailani warrior frowned. And once inside, hundreds of guards, drones, Corrin's own augmentations. "That's why it's a suicide mission." Ren cut in. "But suicide missions win wars." The room buzzed with unease. Then Lost Sarah stepped forward, cloak falling from her shoulders like a banner. "It is not suicide," she said firmly. "It is justice. My children are inside. My people suffer each day he draws breath. I will not ask you to follow me, but I will go." The silence broke. One by one, the rebels slammed fists to chests in salute. Even the youngest did not falter. Ren sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess that settles it. Ashes into fire." Later that night, as the rebels slept, Ren sat outside the observatory ruins, rifle across his knees. The moons painted the rubble silver. He felt her before he heard her. Lost Sarah stepped from the shadows, barefoot, robe brushing the dust. She sat beside him without a word, her shoulder brushing his. "You believe we can do this?" she asked softly. Ren exhaled through his nose. "Belief's a luxury. I believe in blowing holes where there shouldn't be any, in shooting straighter than the other guy, in making bastards regret underestimating me. That's enough." Her lips curved faintly. "You haven't changed. Older, grayer, but still pretty damn charming. She laughed, quick, bright, like wind chimes in a storm. Then her gaze grew serious. I meant what I said years ago. That bond. That promise. Ren's chest tightened, but before he could answer, a sound, too soft for most ears, too sharp for his. He was on his feet in a breath, rifle raised. A shadow moved on the ridge, too smooth, too quick. Not rebel, not soldier, assassin. The first shot cracked the night. The assassin's shot cracked through the night, shattering the fragile calm of the rebel camp. Ren moved faster than thought, dragging lost Sarah behind the stone wall as fire lit the ridge. The rebels scrambled awake, weapons in hand. Children cried, commanders shouted, shadows darted at the edge of sight. And through it all, Ren felt the old fire in his chest, the same fire that had carried him across battlefields 20 years ago, the same fire that had driven him to make a promise to a little alien princess who had believed in him. Now she was no longer a child. She was a queen, and he would keep that promise, even if it meant carving their future out of blood and steel. Because tonight, under 2 moons and a burning sky, hope had finally taken root again. The war was far from over, but a spark had been lit, and sparks become fire.